Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the most controversial remake of them all? Evidently, it's this movie, as today on Talking About the Movies, we're taking a look at Disney's latest live-action remake of its animated classics, and going back to the first one ever, with Gal Gadot as the evil queen and Rachel Zegler from West Side Story as Snow White. Plus,
even on my 17th go-around, I hate dying.
Why aren't you dead? Multiples.
it's taken us 6 years, and in my case 2 weeks, to check out the latest film from Bong Joon-ho, the director of the Oscar-winning Parasite, with Robert Pattinson starring in his first big movie after The Batman. We take a look, finally, at Mickey 17, a double feature coming your way this week on Talking About the Movies. And welcome to Talking About the Movies, as I continue my celebration of 20 years of covering the biggest new releases of the weekend. And hey, boys and girls, guess what time it is? A new Disney live-action remake is out, and who has to come on and say that the movie is nowhere near as bad as everyone made it out to be? This guy, Bob Kelso. How you doing? If you're new to the show, you might know that I'm more positive towards the live-action remakes. Not even positive, really. I don't think they're as bad as most people make them out to be. Especially the last couple have not been as bad as people made them out to be. But will this be the turnaround here? Will this be the one that finally breaks the mold, or will this be the one that just joins some of the worst ones that they've ever made? We'll talk about that one, and we're also going to talk about, as you saw in the beginning there, a movie that came out a couple weeks ago that sadly is not doing well at the box office, and has a lot of high expectations behind it, considering it's directed by the director of Parasite, Bong Joon-ho, and features Robert Pattinson. It was a movie that everyone thought was going to be a much bigger hit than it ended up becoming. We'll take a look at Mickey 17 also as well. So we have a couple movies to get to here, so without further ado, let's get the party started, starting off with this weekend's big new release, Snow White. So, of course, in Snow White, you have the story of Snow White, played here by Rachel Zegler from West Side Story, and Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and The Hunger Games, The Battle of Songbirds and Snakes, as the title role, with Gal Gadot as the evil queen, and follows Snow White, who joins forces with 7 dwarfs and a bandit named Jonathan to free her kingdom from her cruel stepmother. This is, of course, based off of the first ever Disney animated feature back in 1937, Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, which in turn is based off of the Brothers Grimm fairy tale. So like I said before, if you're new to these remakes, to hearing my reviews on these remakes, you should know that I'm not as negative to these remakes as most people are. I mean, here's the stuff that you gotta get straightforward right off the bat here. These movies will never top the animated classics. I mean, these are basically just cover songs. They're the equivalent of cover songs, really. They come out, most of them are not that great, but every once in a while you do get one or the other that actually is kind of good overall. And there have been some good Disney remakes. There have been some good live action remakes. I've talked about them in length before in other videos, and I really should start planning to do I think what I'm going to do after Lilo and Stitch comes out in May is what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and rank all of the best and worst Disney live action remakes, because really a lot of the ones that people say are really bad are not as bad as people let on. If I had to pick one of my favorite ones, 2 would come to mind. 3 of them would come to mind. 3 I really think are very well done. The 9601 Dalmatians, the one that John Hughes wrote, and with Glenn Close's Cruella de Vil. Cinderella, the 2015 one, the Kenneth Branagh one, which I think is probably my favorite one of the bunch. And, of course, Jon Favreau's The Jungle Book. That one I think really is those are my top 3 in terms of the live-action remakes. All the other ones have been mostly okay. Some of them have been very unnecessary and not that great. If I had to pick the worst ones, Beauty and the Beast comes to mind for some of the stupid changes they brought into it. Pinocchio, I think, is the worst one of the bunch. Pinocchio's a bad one. Peter Pan and Wendy's also another one that's not that great overall, but the last couple of ones they've done, I actually kind of liked. I liked the Little Mermaid one, the one with Haley Bailey as Ariel and Melissa McCarthy as Ursula. I thought that one was actually kind of good. And I did kind of like Mufasa the Lion King. I thought it was actually a pretty good movie overall. I mean, yeah, it's definitely not as great as compared to The Lion King, but I like the fact that they did something different with it, and they actually took it into a different direction. I guess technically we can include other, if we want to include other live action remakes in there, Cruella's not that bad. I actually like Cruella. Christopher Robin's kind of good too, and I guess maybe you can kind of count Pete's Dragon, because that is technically an animated character in there, but like I said before, I'm going to do a list after Lilo and Stitch comes out, ranking the best and worst Disney live action remakes, but where would this one fall? I mean, there's been a lot of controversies behind this. Some of them really are not as controversial as they should be. One of the big ones is Rachel Zegler. You know, she came out, you know, she just after Trump got elected, she got a lot of people upset because, you know, she called out Donald Trump, and people lost their shit with her, which, I mean, there's a lot of celebrities out there that don't like Donald Trump, and yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna give you a whole list of there, but there's a lot of them out there, so this really should not come as a surprise to anybody per se. But the bigger controversy, I guess, is when, you know, Rachel Zegler came out basically saying that the old Snow White as she said, she made jokes about the fact that, you know, she basically didn't like the original versions of Snow White and the prince in there, and so she went on this thing, and it really was not as big of a controversy as it should have been. I mean, if anything's going to come out of this movie that's going to hold up the best here, it's Zegler. I mean, she was somebody who really broke out big with West Side Story a couple years ago, and I'll delve into her in just a second, because she really is the best thing about the movie. But bottom line, the whole controversy with her is not really much of a controversy. It's just somebody who, you know, people took it as, how dare she say terrible things about the original Snow White, and no, she really wasn't saying that. She was more saying that, you know, Snow White back in the Snow White was made of a different time period, and so basically, like, they wanted to and the whole point of this was to basically just make a Snow White for a new generation, and basically that type of stuff. But bottom line, the controversy that happened because of it was not even worthy of a controversy per se. I mean, yeah, Gal Gadot, you can easily see why that would be kind of controversial, especially with the fact that, you know, she was coming up, the whole thing with the Israeli-Palestine conflict, which I'm not gonna give you that type of stuff here, because we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the movie itself. I like Gal Gadot. I think she's proven she can be a good actress in many movies, including Wonder Woman. But there was also the criticism of the fact that the movie didn't cast dwarves as the seven dwarfs in here, and yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that's something where I could get behind here. And there was also this photo that came out leaking what they thought were the dwarfs in this movie, but no, it's even stupider than that. We'll get to that later on here, but bottom line, most of the controversies are stuff that you could easily just pass over, and it's mostly just people wanting to bitch and moan for the sake of bitching and moaning. I mean, it is the internet, and you've got a movie with two female leads in there, and yeah, of course it's going to be criticized by a lot of people, and of course Disney had to work around the controversies behind this film, because they really aren't controversies, and so there was a limited premiere. There was a lot of things they had to do to, like, silence the noise out, and the end result of the film is this film right here, which has talent across the board. I mean, the two stars, Mark Webb was also the director of this. Aaron Cressida Wilson and Greta Gerwig wrote a part of the script here. Of course, Greta Gerwig worked on Barbie. So after all of this, and, you know, a lot of people saying that the movie is a mixed bag per se. It's not a good movie, but it's not a bad movie either. Where do I fall on that spectrum? Where do I put this movie at? Pretty much around the same level here. I mean, yeah, it's not a bad movie, but it's not a good movie either. It is kind of in the middle, and I'll start with the positives, because there are some good positives to this movie. One, the visuals. The visuals can look pretty nice. The setting of this world that they inhabit in is really nicely done. There's a couple of really good shots with the animals, the CG animals in here. The trailer had a great shot of the deer in the shadows. That was, of course, from the original movie. I thought that was well done there, and they do a pretty good job with the animals in general here. The look of the film overall is pretty good in terms of the setting, the color they use here, the backgrounds and all that. I thought that worked very well for what they were trying to do here, and yeah, it works pretty well. The casting overall on the two leads, I thought was okay. I thought was really good. Gal Gadot as the evil queen, I thought was pretty good. I didn't think she was that great overall, but I think she's a lot better than people let on here. There are times when, yeah, it gets a little forced at times, but she plays the role pretty well here, and I think it does. I think it's a serviceable role here. But let's get to the breakout star of the movie, and that is, of course, Rachel Zegler, which as I said, I've been defending her ever since West Side Story. I think that's one of the best movies of the decade so far, and she's a great actress who can also sing too, and kind of like with The Little Mermaid. In fact, this movie reminds me a lot of The Little Mermaid, where the lead is really good and proves that she's got a damn good singing voice. And yeah, here's another one where you've got a good lead with a pretty damn good singing voice, and she does these songs very well. She fits the role of Snow White very well. I mean, she just fits the role so well, and I think it just fits what makes her so great of an actress, and not only that, but as a singer too, that we saw in West Side Story. And she really has been the best thing about a lot of the movies that she's been in, even in movies that have not been as good, like Shazam! Fury of the Gods. But I like the Hunger Games Battle of the Songbirds and Snakes. I mean, this is clearly somebody who is really going places, and I think will be a star by the end of the decade overall. And some of the changes I liked in this movie. I like the fact that there's no prince in this movie. There's a new character they create as the love interest for Snow White that's a bandit, but he's basically kind of based off the prince in general. It's kind of like it's changes like that I think really do work to the film's advantage. And, like reminded me a lot again of Cinderella, like when they gave the prince in that movie more of a backstory overall, and instead of him just being like the stock male character to get with the girl at the end, like they actually gave him his arc. They gave him more motivation. I thought that worked very well, and you could tell that they did that here in this movie, and I gotta give them credit for that. I think it's very well done how they handle that. And for the most part, the movie overall comes off as just a film that's kind of like, yeah, it is what it is, and if you go into it knowing what you know from the other live-action remakes, you get what you asked for here. Does it need to be near 2 hours long? No, not really. It really is a film that could have easily just been a 90-minute movie, and you could have easily been done with it overall. But that kind of leads into some of the negatives towards the film in general. And let's get to the Seven Dwarfs. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. The dwarves in this movie look absolutely terrifying. I have no idea why the hell they went with CG dwarves. And not only that, they got these actors in here, notable names like Titus Burgess from Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Martin Kleba, you've seen him in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and Andrew Barth Feldman from No Hard Feelings playing Dopey, which I thought was I think it's kind of interesting with Dopey that his entire character arc from the original Snow White was the fact that he couldn't talk, and we find out that not only can he talk, but he's the narrator of the movie, which, I like that guy a lot. I thought he was very good in No Hard Feelings, but I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that that decision in general to make him talk in this. I mean, I feel like there should have been so much more to that and some of the changes they made, but the CG overall on them is really not that good. It kind of reminds me of, again, kind of like with Little Mermaid, like the look of Sebastian and Flounder in The Little Mermaid. Like, they were bad, but the performances, I guess, were fine, but it's really hard for me to enjoy those performances while the characters in here look ungodly, ugly. I mean, that's the same thing that happened with The Little Mermaid, and the same thing that happens here in this movie. And those bandits that everyone thought were the dwarves, it was from the original photo that came out. Yeah, they absolutely serve no purpose to the movie. There's just a completely pointless group of characters that I feel like were kind of thrown in there so they can do something like Tangled in a way, like the goons at the bar that Rapunzel gets acquainted with and they have that song with. I feel like they were trying to do that for this movie, but it just didn't work overall. And yeah, some of the times when the CG doesn't work, like when you see the evil queen turning into the old haggard that basically gives Snow White the poison apple, yeah, it doesn't. It's not as intimidating or as terrifying as it was in the original. The original still really is creepy at times with the way that they have the shots in there. And I really do feel like this movie in particular was not trying as hard as they were probably hoping to do so. And some of the changes they make to the storyline isn't as good as it should be. There are times when it does work, but, some is like little touches. Like, there was a big thing that people got up about by the fact that, Snow White is basically not in the glass coffin at the end of the movie, like she was in the animated movie. They just lie her on some rocks, and that didn't really bug me all that much. But I just felt like that was another nitpicky thing that people tried to use to basically say whatever they want to about the movie in general. But as far as the film itself goes, I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it either. It's a movie that's not, but it's a movie where I'm not the main target audience. Most of the people that are complaining about the movie are not the target audience. It's for the kids. The kids want to see this movie, and the kids would want to see this movie. Those won't see anything with Disney's name on it. I mean, Disney has done a very good job of marketing these movies to kids, and yeah, they've done a very good job of handling that. And like I said before, nobody is taking the original animated classics away from you. In fact, when this is coming out on Blu-ray in a couple months, I'm guaranteeing you that there will be a 2-movie collection out there with the original Snow White and the new Snow White. You can get in one big collection. I mean, that's pretty much a given at this point. They've done it with all the other live-action remakes in general. And yeah, for the kids, I think kids are going to really enjoy this. I think the kids will really enjoy this one a lot, even if they never saw Snow White for the first time. And basically, it should give parents, the parents of these kids, an opportunity to give them a chance to watch this. And then when you get home, hey, here's some more Snow White for you. Then put on the original Snow White, and there you go. You get a chance to show them that there, and they'll enjoy it. And I think a lot of kids are really going to enjoy this movie. I think a lot of kids will get attached to Rachel Zegler as Snow White in here. I mean, she is very good in the film, and she really is the glue that's holding this together to make it a film that is a general crowd-pleasing movie. It's a film that, for the normal public, the normal audience that's going to go see this movie, they're going to eat this up. They're going to enjoy this for what it is. And yeah, it may not be the big box office hit that Disney's hoping for, or the terrible movie that everyone else wants it to be, but for the kids and for the adults, it'll be perfectly fine for them. If you raise your kids the right way and they want to see this movie, I think they're going to enjoy it a lot. And if you give them an opportunity to see the original, I think they'll enjoy that much more too. But they're not going to have anything negative to say about this movie in general. But I mean, my overall thoughts on it is, it's fine. It's a fine remake. It's not one of the better ones, but it's not one of the worst ones either. It's definitely one that's in the middle. And so my review of that is pretty much that. I give this a middle-of-the-road review, a mixed opinion, but mostly my thumb is leaning a little towards positivity. But for my official review, yeah, a mixed opinion. Not really thumbs up, not really thumbs down. Just okay. It's a good movie for kids. I don't think it's not gonna take away the enjoyment of the original Snow White in general, and it's far from the worst live-action remakes that Disney has done in general. So yeah, nobody really should be getting that upset about this movie in general, especially with the stupid controversy is circling around the movie. It's not worth it to get mad about this film. It really is not. So now, with all that said, that's the big new release of the weekend. Now let's go back a couple weekends to the big new release of a couple weeks ago, and that is Mickey 17. So in the movie Mickey 17, which is based off of the book of Mickey 7, this stars Robert Pattinson as an expendable, a disposable crew member on a space mission, selected for dangerous tasks because his body can be reprinted if he dies, with his memories largely intact. However, one regeneration, though, happens and things go very wrong, as Mickey 18 and Mickey 17 now exist in the same universe because something went wrong with Mickey 17 before they decided to put in a new clone, and chaos and hilarity ensues in this movie because this is a sci-fi comedy, and that's part of the reason why I don't think the movie did very well in general. There's a couple of things you need to know about this movie before we delve into it, as far as the terms of the success rate for the film. Bong Joon-ho, of course, this is his first major project after Parasite, which won him the Best Picture Oscar 6 years ago. He also did Snowpiercer, but he's still not a recognizable name in terms of a director just yet. And the fact that this movie opened up to #1 when it came out should be a sign that this is the start of him becoming a director that can be reliable in general. But it's a lot of pressure on this movie in particular for a couple of other reasons we'll get to. Robert Pattinson, of course, has had this great career renaissance in this decade, actually, with Tenet, and then, of course, with The Batman, my favorite movie of 2022. And this is also an original sci-fi film, even though it's based off of a book of the same name. This is a movie that's clearly hoping to potentially start a new sci-fi franchise, and original sci-fi movies in general don't really end up doing all that well. It's very hard for for an original sci-fi film without a franchise name attached to it to really do well in particular. I mean, this isn't Star Trek, this isn't Star Wars, this isn't Alien, this isn't Blade Runner. This is its own thing, and most people don't even know what the book actually is. I've never even heard of the book before this. And it also doesn't help that the marketing for the film doesn't really do a good job of selling the film in general. But then again, it's mostly because of the fact that the film had been pushed around the schedule so many times before. This was supposed to come out originally, I believe, in 2022, and then they pushed it back to 2023. And they pushed that back because of the actor strike that was going on. And so they then rescheduled it for the end of January of this year, pushed it back to April, Easter weekend, and then pushed it all the way back up to March, where it was currently released at. And now Sinners is coming out on that same Easter weekend. But yeah, so there's a lot of things going on here in terms of, how they sold the movie in general. Because they originally sold it as a straightforward sci-fi film. There wasn't really much of a comedic aspect to the original trailers that were first coming out. And then when they finally settled on an early 25 release date, that's when they focused more on the comedic aspects of the movie. And it would help if the reviews would really help the film find its audience in general. But the reviews have been mostly good. They haven't been great. There's been a lot of things I've heard about the film before I saw it. Mostly the fact that it starts off really strong and then the second half of the film really kind of falls apart, which is typical for for a sci-fi film like this in general. And having now finally seen the movie, I can honestly say that a lot of the people that said that it starts off strong and then kind of peters off at the end, they're very much right on that. I think it starts off very promisingly. The first hour I thought was really good. And then the second half of it kind of starts falling off the cliff a little bit here, but never to the point where I would say it's a bad movie by any means. I still came out of that movie liking it. I really enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a very good movie and shows that Robert Pattinson clearly is a guy that is going to have a really promising career with more of these bigger roles in his favor. I mean, he's really proven that Twilight was basically just a fluke in his career, that just a bad movie with a bad character overall. In fact, we're seeing a lot of people from Twilight slowly but surely, realizing that, hey, it's not the movies that made them terrible. It's not the actors that made them terrible. It's the movies that made them terrible. Because look at what Anna Kendrick has done since then. Look what Kristen Stewart has done since then. I mean, she got an Oscar nomination for playing Princess Diana. She was great in that movie, Spencer. The only one who's come out really bad in that since the Twilight movies is Taylor Lautner, but then again, it's basically because he's been relegated to terrible Adam Sandler movies. But I digress. What about this film here? Like I said, it's a good movie. I feel like it could have been a great movie if the second half of the film had been more enjoyable like the first half was. When they start adding in more elements and more twists and turns to the storyline, I feel like that's where the film starts to lose a little bit of its muster. And it does kind of fall into predictable territory. I mean, this is basically a comedic version of Edge of Tomorrow in a way, because Edge of Tomorrow had the same type of storyline where you have a guy that dies every time, and then he wakes up completely like nothing happened, except this time around it's a clone, and he has the same memories of the previous clone that was before him, and yeah. It's a little too similar to Edge of Tomorrow in a way. I think that's what kind of pushed people away a little bit, but at the same time, like I said, there's nothing bad about the movie per se. Nothing I would say that completely destroys the film in general. I just wish the second half was a lot more intriguing, a lot more interesting, and didn't kind of go down a formulaic route like most of these movies do. And I think that really is the thing that kind of will hurt the film a little bit here. So it really took a movie that I was really enjoying and probably would have given this a strong recommendation to a movie that I would still recommend to people, but it's not as good as it's not as great as I think it could have been. I feel like there could have been so much more to it. And it definitely feels like Bong Joon-ho kind of stepped out of his usual territory with this movie. Well, I mean, Snowpiercer and Parasite are very stylistic films that have these very dramatic tones and how they present the way the film in general those films in general work. And this one, I feel like does go a little bit too formulaic for its own good, especially in the second half. But like I said, it's still a good movie regardless. I think it is a very enjoyable film. I think it is a film that definitely deserves more eyes to it because it is a film that really does deserve to be seen because it's a really good movie. And kind of like with a lot of the movies that have come out this month, nobody's really promoting these movies in general for some reason. I've kind of touched on that in the video earlier this week on this channel here and also on the Reviewing Network Live. But bottom line here, Mickey 17 is a really good movie that I feel like could have been a really great movie had the second half been a whole lot better than the first half overall. So I would still recommend it. I would give it a positive thumbs up. I think it's a very entertaining film. I think if you're going to see it because you like the work of this director beforehand and you like these actors that are attached to it, a really good cast overall. Robert Pattinson, Naomi Aki from Batwoman, Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead, Toni Collette, Mark Ruffalo. A lot of good talent in this movie, and they do carry the load of the film. Like I said, just expect the first half to be the best part of the film, and don't be surprised when the second half starts going off a little bit. But like I said, it's more than enough for me to recommend it. I give it a good thumbs up. I think it's a very entertaining film. One you should definitely check out. It's definitely one that deserves a lot more attention than it gets, and again, it also doesn't help that the film is getting released on digital 3 weeks after its release in theaters, even though this thing has a $118 million production budget and has to make double that to be somewhat profitable. But Warner Bros. Just kind of like, no, we'll go ahead and take the $75 to $80 million loss on it because we're Warner Brothers. We don't give a shit anymore. Hell, we're really thinking about getting rid of the Looney Tunes because fuck it, we're not going to do anything with them. And that's not even a joke. There was a story that came out this week that supposedly the Looney Tunes could be sold to another studio, which at this point, I say do it, man. Get him away from David Zaslav as quickly as possible because, good lord, that guy has just run Warner Brothers to the ground. By the way, did you see Alton Knights is playing in theaters this weekend? The Robert De Niro movie where he plays dual roles, and it's directed by Barry Levinson, who did Rain Man and also was written by the guy that wrote the Goodfellas and The Irishman. No, I bet you didn't realize that because they didn't bother to promote the damn movie, but that's a discussion for the Reviewing Network Live coming up later today, so be on the lookout for that. But so yeah, overall, I like Mickey 17. That's basically the overall result of this review here. Did I like Mickey 17? I did. I liked it. I liked the first half a lot. I think it falls off a little bit in the second half, but I still recommend it. It's something you should definitely check out. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on Snow White and Mickey 17. As always, let me know your thoughts down below. Tell me what you thought of both of these movies. And coming up next week on the show, we've got another one of our special 20th anniversary editions here on Talking About the Movies, where we're going to be talking about the best movies I've seen in the last 20 years. 20 years worth of reviewing movies. What movies of the last 2 decades do I think are the 10 best overall? So that will be the subject of next week's episode of the show, so please be on the lookout for that. That's coming up here next week here on the Reviewing Network. But if you want to see more videos like this and see my reviews for The Day the Earth Blew Up, Plankton the Movie, and Flow, go ahead and hit the video on the corner here. Check out the last episode I did. And with all that said, I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and the notification button as well as the bell. You get updates of when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.